I'm excited about this morning's speaker. Karleen Manchanda has been an online member since 2021, and she participates in programs from her home in Winnipeg, Manitoba, which is located in Treaty 1 territory up in Canada. She's a Zen Life teacher who's just finishing up her training and getting ready to teach her first classes. She studied with Roshi Robert Althouse, and she also is engaged in formal Zen studies with Sensei June. She's a fourth-generation Japanese American, born and raised in Hawaii, where she had connections to several mission schools and Buddhist traditions until she moved to Illinois in 1982, but recently rediscovered her ties to Buddhism. Over the past 10 years, she's practiced and studied mindfulness, meditation, and yoga, participating in training at the Center for Mindfulness Studies in Toronto, the Omega Institute in New York, and online with UC Berkeley's Greater Good Science Center. She holds a Master of Education degree from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, and has a strong interest in teaching mindfulness and meditation to children, teachers, and caregivers. And she's a wonderful, we're excited about her teaching career, but she's a wonderful close friend of the Sangha. And we're really excited to hear her talk this morning, entitled "The Crack in Everything, Shame and Openness on the Zen-Inspired Path." And with that, we'll turn it over to you this morning, Karleen.
Thank you so much, Michael. I just want to check the sound for everyone. Can everyone hear me? Just switch to okay online, and in the Zen Center as well. Is the sound all right? Okay. Great. Thank you so much for being here to join me. This is my first Sunday morning Zen talk, and I'm filled with both excitement and a little nervousness. My kids are 17 and 19, and when they found out that I was giving a talk, they immediately said to me, "Oh, is that like a TED Talk?" And I said, well, I'm not sure it's going to be quite that entertaining, but hopefully it'll be somewhat interesting. So my name is Karleen Manchanda, as Michael said, and my pronouns are she and her. And I'm so grateful to belong to this Sangha. I've been kind of a mindfulness nerd and a solo student of mindfulness and Buddhism for 10 plus years. And I think one of the things that's really been missing is this connection with others who are on the path. I also am thankful to the pandemic for bringing me here through Kumu June and her hula, and also all the online opportunities. So I'm really, really pleased to be here. The first 12 years of my life were spent in Hawaii on the island of Oahu, and the next 15 were actually in Illinois. And the last 25 years have been here in Canada. And so to start out, I just wanted to say that as a child of Hawaii, as a grandchild of farmers, and as a great-grandchild of plantation laborers, I feel like I've been quite formed by the land and the sky and the water. And so as a settler in Winnipeg, Manitoba, I do wish to acknowledge that the land on which I now live is shared with me by the original inhabitants, who are the Anishinaabe, the Cree, the Oji Cree, the Dakota, Dene, and the Métis peoples. And I so cherish this connection that I have to Indigenous cultures because of my upbringing in Hawaii in particular, but also because of their worldview and how aligned it is with Buddhist worldview, I think. There's an Indigenous scholar here named Dr. Carrie Miller, and she explains that relationships between people and plants, people and animals, people and place are central to Indigenous identity, ways of knowing and being, and our spiritual selves. And in this worldview, there's a sense of belonging, of being connected to each other and to the earth. And you may recognize this because it is a fundamental interconnectedness of all things that's at the heart of Buddhist teachings. And it's also at the heart of one of the most painful human experiences, which is shame. The title of my talk today is taken from Leonard Cohen's often quoted song, Anthem. Forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. And this line came back to me time and again as I was preparing for this talk. And given the nature of the topic of shame, which can kind of bring up all kinds of things for people, I also want to start with an invitation for you just to notice what arises during the talk in your thoughts, in your body, but especially in your heart. And with honesty and a lot of kindness, just consider that, and notice if you're feeling safe, or are you feeling challenged, or are you feeling overwhelmed at any time? And if you are moving towards overwhelm or experiencing that, then please just ask yourself, what do I need right now to feel safe? And please feel free to do that, whether this means listening more passively or getting a cup of tea or even leaving the talk. I invite you to take good care of yourself. So with that invitation, I will proceed out to the big question, maybe, why in your first talk, Carleen, would you choose the topic of shame? And I could say Roshi and Sensei made me do it, which is only partly true. But personally, I actually have a fairly long-standing and intimate relationship with shame, probably since childhood. And it is actually a fact that shame is a very universal experience. In North American culture, I think that shame leads to, it's kind of the seed of a lot of major suffering, things like loneliness and anxiety, depression, addiction, eating disorders, and just feeling very much that you don't belong or that you're not enough. And in a Buddhist context, I think that shame can lead us to believe that we're separate and to forget the truth of our connectedness. But I also speak about shame because the more we can speak about it, the less power it has over us, and the more opportunities we have to transform it. So what exactly is shame? It may mean different things to different people. And in preparing for this, I came across some Buddhist writings that actually distinguish two kinds of shame. There's a healthy shame, which some say even that the Buddha considered a very valuable thing. And that is the kind of shame that is considered instructive or helpful because it helps us to evaluate our actions or our speech or our thoughts. And so some might term this as guilt. And the belief here is that I did something bad, maybe a shame or the guilt of, telling a deliberate lie. An unhealthy shame, however, is where you have a fear of judgment or disconnection that's harmful to the well-being. And the belief here is I am bad, not that I did something bad, but I am bad. And that shame could be, in contrast, one of being considered a liar that no one will ever trust again. And so in looking at what I'm talking to you today about, it's more the latter type of shame, because that's the one that seems to be more of an obstacle and a detriment to us as we move along this path. If the Zen inspired, living is about openness and empathy and clarity, if we are experiencing or holding a lot of shame, that can really put a stop on our being able to open up to others, our ability to empathize with others, and to see clearly what's really happening in our life. And so I use the definition that Brene Brown, who's a research professor in, I believe, the University of Houston. And for more than a decade, she's actually studied shame and vulnerability and courage and worthiness as well. And so what she says is that shame is the intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging. And she goes on to say that people often want to believe that shame is reserved for people who have survived an unspeakable trauma, but this is not true. That can happen, but this is not true. Shame is something that we all experience. There are many ways in which we experience it. The commonality is that it causes us a lot of pain and suffering. In my own experience, my shame has not come from a horrible childhood or an extreme adversity. I have a loving family, had many opportunities, not a lot of trauma, but it has much more to do with more subtle roots in family, in ancestry, and in culture. So as a highly sensitive, introverted kid, my emotions were often really difficult for others to understand, which I then internalized as kind of a fundamental flaw in myself. And was constantly feeling, what's wrong with me? You know, what's wrong with me? And this shame story got repeated by me and reinforced by different cultural conditioning until I grew to believe that I was actually unworthy of life itself. And fortunately never acted on that belief, but it was a very lonely and very, very painful place to be. But several years ago, after beginning my healing journey, I wrote this reflection, and I'd like to share it with you just to get you a sense of how shame has impacted me, but also the kinds of effects that it may have. So I wrote, I have always felt deeply. I think that this is part of what makes me prone to depression, but this also makes me prone to tears, joyful tears, painful tears, grateful tears, raging tears, awestruck tears. And I have learned that tears provoke deep feelings in others. And these feelings are often uncomfortable and even undesirable. So I have struggled throughout my lifetime to trade my tears for something more acceptable to others. Because what is acceptable to others has so often defined what I accept about myself. But today I realize that my efforts to hide my feelings and tears for the comfort of others have come at a very high cost. By hiding my tears, I have silenced my truest feelings, and this is like keeping a dark secret. You may share it with a few who are closest to you, but you move through life with a fear of being discovered. You begin to believe that if you are afraid to reveal this part of yourself, then there must be something within you that is shameful and flawed. And thoughts like these are seeds that can take root in your mind and grow large in your soul, so large that your inner light can be obscured by the tangle of branches that are now thick and strong. But that light, like the sun beyond the clouds, is always there. And so, just as something that's a little active, I was an elementary school teacher, so I like kind of active learning. If you take your hand, if you feel like joining me, and take one hand and you imagine that something that perhaps you have felt shame about in the past, that thing is in that palm of your hand. What happens when we feel that shame and that pain? We close our hand, right? We close around that thing that causes the pain, and we become constricted, just like this fist. It's protected for the time being, but it's very hard, and it's not open. Um, and this is, I think this is the way that that I move through life for a large part of my life in good chunks. Um, and I think that when we hide or avoid the shame that we feel, then what we're doing is sort of building inner walls like that fist, and we use strategies to build those walls. My personal favorites were withdrawal and perfectionism. If I did those things, then people wouldn't find out that there was this terrible flaw about me. For some people, it might be people pleasing, or it might even be aggression to lash out because you're feeling that you have to be the first one to attack rather than be the first one to be injured. And these walls end up really separating us from connecting with each other and preventing us from actually even taking care of ourselves, because we close off, we can't even take care of what's inside those walls. These fearful defenses then become obstacles for showing up as we are. And Chris gave us that beautiful talk on noble friendship a couple of weeks ago, and how relationships are so key to our journey on awakening, and that can only happen when we open and we show up as we are. So shame really can hamper that, hinder it. So again, the line is, forget your perfect offering. There's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. So this is the crack in everything, and it is our vulnerability. The vulnerability to actually feeling the pain of our experiences. And it's also at the same time vulnerable, but it's also an opening. It becomes an opening because we then have the opportunity to start looking at what we fear more closely, more clearly, when we illuminate that, when the crack sort of lets that light in. And if we don't rush right away to try and cover up the cracks as quickly as we can, then we actually have an opportunity to begin to get to know our shame, that practice. I love the story about the Buddha inviting Mara to tea when Mara comes to try to, bother, distract, ask questions, and his attendant tries to shoo Mara away. And Mara is kind of like, obstacles. But instead, the Buddha says, "Oh, yes, it's you, Mara. Please come in," and serve some tea. And that's, for me, that's been always a really helpful image of working with, whether it's shame or some other really painful thing. It doesn't have to be something we're getting rid of. It doesn't have to be something we're shutting out. It could actually be something that we start to get curious about and to try to, in some sense, befriend. And there's a teacher, an author, activist that I really love named Parker Palmer. And he writes, "My life is not only about my strengths and virtues, it is also about my liabilities and my limits, my trespasses and my shadow. An inevitable, though often ignored dimension of the quest for wholeness is that we must embrace what we dislike or find shameful about ourselves, as well as what we are confident and proud of." And I remember reading once about a meditation teacher that said, the boundary of what we can accept is the boundary to our freedom. So if we refuse to accept some part of ourselves, that becomes the boundary to our freedom. We're not as able to feel free in our life and moving through it. One very early morning when I was struggling through some of these darker times, it was before the sunrise, and there was a robin outside our window that was singing away. And I tried to listen if it was singing to another robin, but no, it was just singing all by itself, and felt almost like it was singing to me. And it inspired a little poem, and I'll just read you the first little bit of it. But it was, before the dawn of morning, a robin sang to me, "When you love yourself in darkness, your heart will be set free. And I think there's a great freedom in fully accepting ourselves as we are, including our shame. And there's freedom in believing that we're inherently good and worthy of love and belonging. There is an Ojibwe author, storyteller named Richard Wagamese, who has sadly passed away much too young. But from his indigenous background and his culture and tradition, he had a beautiful way of explaining what he calls perfect love, and they might call the creator, but in Buddhism, we might know this as Buddha nature, this kind of perfect love or unconditional love. And he says, within the realm of perfect love, there is no judgment. If there is no judgment, then there can be no failure. And in turn, if failure does not exist, there is no unworthiness. We are all one energy. We are worthy and we always were. We never have to qualify. And the spiritual path sometimes is one that we take where we walk it and hopefully see with more and more clarity what are the habits of mind that are skillful and can lead us towards that love and awareness. And so with the opening of shame, the experience is painful, but if we have the courage to be with it and soften with some compassion towards it, it allows us to release that pain, I feel, and it also allows us to be with the pain of others in a much deeper way. So at this point, you might be wondering, well, what exactly do we do to help ourselves on this path from going from believing that I'm a shameful person to just believing that I'm a person experiencing shame? And there are many things, many different ways. And I would say that for some of us, myself included, that this path does involve finding people to be in relationship with, because shame is something that happens in relationship with others. And so in that sense, it has to be healed in relationship with others. And for me, some of those relationships were with people that I love, and some of those relationships were with helping professionals who were really able to guide and give perspective and skills and tools for me to help me along my way, life coaches, counselors, and also any kind of activity, any ceremony, any ritual that helps us to remember that pure love that we actually hold inside. Because sometimes with shame, when we tighten our fist around that thing we're ashamed of, we also then build a wall around the gold and that love that's deep inside us. We block that out as well. And so to remember that that's there, for me, things like yoga, writing, art, music, hula, being in nature. For you, it may be other things. And specifically, though, in Buddhism, the antidote to shame is often said to be loving kindness meditation. My personal experience with that is absolutely loving kindness meditation is definitely good medicine. But it was very difficult for me to begin that practice because I was at such a point of feeling unworthy. I didn't feel that I was even worthy of being able to what you do in first step, which is to wish yourself some loving kindness. So for me, another practice that has been really pivotal has been mindful self-compassion. And this is something that has really been developed by two people, a researcher named, a professor named Kristen Neff, and a clinical psychologist named Christopher Germer. And their concept of self-compassion is really quite simple. It's that it's treating yourself or ourselves with the kindness that we would show to a good friend. It's kind of learning how to become your own best friend. And with this fist, I think the attitude of both mindful self-compassion as well as loving kindness meditation is one of being with, allowing, and relaxing, as opposed to trying to force change or to get rid of. And so if we take our fist, you can do this with me if you feel like, again, and we make it pretty tight and we try to force it open. We take our other hand and we try to pull it open, just try doing that. Typically what happens is there's a lot of resistance. The fist gets even tighter, it's trying to pull back. Whereas if we take that same fist and we hold the other hand open and we imagine this to be sort of a loving cradle of compassion, and we just rest the fist into that cradle, what generally happens is, like magic, the fist starts to open and relax all by itself. And so this is sort of the approach or the attitude that we bring to these practices. It's that real kindness and sense of allowing and just being with. And so one of the things that is recommended is something that's called a self-compassion break. And this is really helpful, really on the spot. You can practice it with things that, you can think of as something that brought strong emotions or shameful feelings, and you could practice it with that. But you can also do it right in the moment when something happens that brings up a sense of shame. And so the first thing, and again, if you would like to try it along with me, please do. The first thing is that you can even choose a physical gesture of kindness. So for me, I like to put my hand over my heart. Some people like to put their hands around their faces as you would hold a little child. And the first thing you say when you realize you're feeling this pain or this suffering in the moment is to acknowledge it and to say, this is a moment of suffering. And this is bringing the first component of mindfulness to this practice, just being aware of without judgment. The second part is then saying to yourself that suffering is part of life. And the wording of this you can choose on your own, but what you're trying to remind yourself of is the common humanity of the experience of pain and struggle. You can also say, I am not alone in my struggle, to remind yourself that you're not the only one who feels this way. And then finally, you apply the kindness, which is like a loving kindness meditation. And you say, may I be kind to myself in this moment? Or something like, may I accept myself as I am? And if you do those three things, if that becomes something that you can do regularly in those moments when you have strong feelings arising, for me, it was really helpful. When I was compassionate to myself, I was more likely to reach out to others for support. We learn how to hold our own pain in that cradle of compassion. And then we can do it well for others also. And bringing us, close to the end here, loving kindness meditation, metta, the practice of cultivating goodwill towards yourself and all beings. It emphasizes your interconnection. It emphasizes that gentleness, and the intentions and the language of that just allow the heart to rest and relax and open. And I think that this openness really sort of reduces the tendency of our mind to judge, which is a large part of shame. And so in closing, I would like to invite you to join me in a short, just a brief loving kindness meditation with some language that is specifically designed for this talk. And it comes from the Vermont Zen Center, but I learned it through a yoga teacher that I have here. And So to begin, you can just find a comfortable seat, a posture that's upright but not uptight. If you're sitting on a chair, maybe your feet are flat on the ground, you're feeling rooted into the ground or the floor, which is eventually rooted into the earth. If you're on a cushion, you can also feel that contact. And then just becoming aware of your breath. You can begin to follow your breath as it comes in into the center of your chest, as long as that's comfortable for you, into the area of your heart. And just give yourself a few moments to just breathe in and out of your heart space. And perhaps as you're doing this, you might take notice. Does your heart feel open? Does it feel constricted in any way? Does it feel warm or cool? Or is it just neutral? There's no need to alter it, just to notice that. And I'm going to read four lines for this meditation, and you could repeat it to yourself after I say them. And if you like, you can take an inhale into the heart space and you can say the line to yourself on your exhale. May I dwell in an open heart. May I attend to whatever clouds the heart. May I be awake in this moment, just as it is. May this awakened heart be extended to all beings. May I dwell in an open heart. May I attend to whatever clouds the heart. May I be awake in this moment, just as it is. May this awakened heart be extended to all beings. So as we finish up, you can come back to just a natural breathing. You can either open your eyes or gently blink them open as you feel ready. And my heart thanks you for allowing me to share today. And I'm very open to any thoughts or questions that you might have. Thank you so much.
I have, first of all, happy belated birthday again.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I so appreciated your talk this morning because I grew up feeling immense shame around crying, and, was kind of taught that it was a form of manipulation or a weakness. And I'm a very easy crier. If I see somebody else crying, I'll cry. If I'm happy, I'll cry. All of it. And I had tampered it down for a long time, and I was so proud of myself. And like, I felt like it was like a bragging thing, like, oh, I don't cry anymore, look at me. And then it just like the floodgates opened. And it wasn't until Roshi told me about the tender heart and how it's seen as a source of strength in Buddhism that I started to kind of view it differently. And then I was researching it. I was researching crying. And I found out that humans are the only animals who evolved to cry with emotions. Other animals will cry if they have dirt in their eyes or, other things, but we're the only ones who cry to emote. And it's just so funny to me that we're actively trying to de-evolve ourselves and throw away this gift that Mother Nature is trying to give us. And we're like, oh, no, thank you. It's interesting, the shame that revolves around that whole concept of crying, and so thank you so much. It was such a wonderful talk, and I appreciated it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Thanks, Linda.
Hi, this is Chris.
Hi, Chris.
What a marvelous talk, Carleen. Thank you so much. Just a great reminder of how shame can operate in our lives and how we can give ourselves self-compassion. I particularly appreciate when the first time I heard this teaching more than 10 years ago from Roshi, I remember having this experience in my body of, I don't quite know what he's talking about. I don't experience shame. And as I thought about it more and more, I realized that in my life, shame manifested through my perfectionism. That every perfectionist tendency I had was about feeling not good enough or being fearful of being seen as not good enough. And that was sort of my pathway into appreciating how it operated in my life. And I really, really love the meditation you just did at the end. I just captured 3 lines, but I missed the middle, the third line. I wonder if you'd be willing to say those 4 lines one more time.
Sure, absolutely. May I dwell in an open heart. May I attend to whatever clouds the heart. May I be awake in this moment, just as it is. And may this awakened heart be extended to all beings.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your talk.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, I really fell in love with that series of of wishes when I first heard it.
Carleen, thank you so much. That was even more than I thought. I really have a deep appreciation for recognizing the trauma awareness and sensitivity that you bring to this. I know we're both fans of David Treleaven, and I could really feel that intertwined. And I think it's, especially with topics like this, that's so important to give people choice and to recognize that this could be really hard. And I also very much appreciated this sort of, I heard this term in my head, the encouragement of soft courage in the face of embracing these places that we have felt were unembraceable before. And I also really appreciate the somaticizing some of the experience. Such grace in the presentation that then gave me room to reflect on areas and feel my own tears and feel, what came alive that I now have a deeper opportunity to examine. And so I'm really grateful. Thank you for the work that you've done over the years and for sharing your work as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Barb.
Carleen, really appreciated this thoughtful approach to shame, and that self-compassion break that you mentioned at the end was really wonderful. also a way of, working with it, because it's so, it can be just so many walls that we put up. So this is a great way to kind of enter. So could you repeat that self-compassion break? I
Sure.
think it was, that was really
Absolutely.
skillful. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's three components, and it's based off of the three elements of their work, which is mindfulness, common humanity, and kindness. And so the first one with mindfulness is just saying this is a moment of suffering, or whatever language really makes it connects with you. It's acknowledging. The second is suffering is a part of life, or I am not alone in my struggle, or there are others who are struggling too. Anything like that to acknowledge the common humanity, the human experience of this kind of thing. And then the final one is just an expression of kindness towards yourself. So may I be kind to myself in this moment, or may I accept myself just as I am. There are many, many variations you could experiment with to see what feels right, but yeah.
Carleen, that was, I don't know where to begin. That was such a deep and thoughtful talk. And the way you overcome shame is by talking about it, just as you did. You're a perfect example of working with shame, what you did this morning. And there's so many. I'm going to use your 4 lines in our curriculum for loving kindness meditation. Those were great. And I think I particularly appreciate, there's so many things I appreciate about your talk, but the thing that stands out to me is how you grounded it in the beginning with the indigenous culture, and how in indigenous culture, there is a sense of belonging, a belonging to community, to Sangha, belonging to the earth, and all those relationships that are that we suffer from not having that worldview. And so
Yeah.
it was just a beautiful, brave talk that you gave this morning, and I was so inspiring. I'm about ready to cry. I'll try not to, but trading your tears.
You don't have to hold back. Yeah.
Anyway,
Thank you.
thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
I'm so
Thank you,
grateful for your
Roshi.
practice and for your. I'm so happy that you're a Zen Life instructor here at the Zen Center.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I often, wonder what it would be like if we all, from the moment we were born, we're being taught this worldview that we're never alone and we're always connected. How that would be. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I want to thank you for your vulnerability and openness in sharing your own personal journey. And I know that one of the factors that really increases the shame element is the isolation, the feeling of can't show this. And so for you to be so open and willing to share is really beautiful. There's a lot in this talk that I'll think about. So it's a really beautiful talk. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Bear.
Thank you, Carleen. I just want to also acknowledge what a great talk it was and how much I appreciated your being vulnerable and sharing yourself and your experience and all your studying. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Robin.
Thank you for a wonderful talk, Carleen. So well thought through, so many new ways to appreciate shame and the impact on our lives. Deeply appreciated.
Thank you, Carleen. And happy birthday.
Thank you, Earl.
I love those lines, the Leonard Cohen, in everything there is a crack.
Yes.
That's how the light gets in. That's always very hopeful for me.
Mhm.
It creates a lot of generosity and hope, you know, that there is a light
Mhm.
that gets in. Thank you.
All right, if no one else has anything to share, have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Thank you so much, Carleen. That was a wonderful talk.
Thank you all. Thank you all.
Good job, Karleen.